Welcome back to another episode of Content Amplified. Today I'm joined by Rit. Rit, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Ben.
Yeah, Rit, I'm excited. This is a subject that I could spend hours talking about, and we're going to try to condense a conversation into 15 minutes. So let's dive in. But before we get into it, though, let's get to know you. Tell us about your work career and background.
Absolutely. Maybe I'll start at the beginning. So, like I'm originally from India. I came to the United States in 2010 to do my undergraduate degree in physics and philosophy. I graduated from Claremont McKenna, and then after that, decided to not use any of my degrees, and I started a UX research company called Try My UI. We bootstrapped that to like 1.2 million ARR, and I that was my first job out of college, and I ran that for a bit, and then I exited that, and after that I was just I wasn't planning to immediately get back in the market, to be honest. And I was just kind of seeing what's out there. I came across this company, that the company I'm at today, Glencoco. They made a post on Wellfound for a head of growth, and I had experience kind of with this like dual-sided marketplace element with my UX research platform, because we had, on the one hand, we had testers, like website testers, a community of testers. And then on the other hand, we had companies. And there were like analogs and parallels there. I got to chatting with Ingwan, who's the CEO of Glencoco, and the rest of the Glencoco team. And they're just an absolutely insanely talent dense team. Like our CEO is the ex head of growth of global growth at Wiz. And before that, he was running demand gen at Verkada. Just unbelievable sales organizations, like really powerful sales principles. And once I got to chatting with them, and it was like, oh, these guys are building something really cool, and I would love to be a part of it. And that's kind of how I'm here now. So now I am the head of growth at Glencoco. I oversee customer acquisition, customer onboarding, as well as like just general user side. So like for us, users are different from customers. Users are the callers that make calls on Glencoco. I oversee caller acquisition. And then maybe like just a quick note about what Glencoco is, we're like Uber for B2B sales. So we connect companies that want to meet with a specific ICP. Those companies can name a price per meeting, and then we connect them with fractional SDRs that leverage our tech to prospect into leads for them and book meetings. And the companies only pay per qualified meeting. So they have the luxury of like a de-risked outbound, standing up a de-risked outbound sales motion.
I love it. Okay, I'm fascinated by the business. I love your work experience. And we're going to be talking about the subject that everyone has on their mind, how to use AI, specifically for writing content, but not losing authenticity.
Yeah.
So we kind of have that caveat in that title, writing with AI without losing authenticity. Why do people even care about the authenticity? Like, why is that such a big deal when people are discussing AI content in general?
That's a great question, right? I think maybe let me back it up, right? Like the reason why, at least my understanding of why we write content, right, as B2B businesses, is to like get out, broadcast these specific ideas, right? And it could be like, typically it's like, hey, let me educate you about the problem space, right, that I'm in. So it's like, hey, for us, like for Glencoco, if we were to do it, we anchor on like, hey, it's frustrating and expensive to build in-house sales teams, right? There's high churn. SDRs are weird entry-level roles. By default, your best SDRs don't want to be SDRs anymore, right? So you're like in this constant revolving door thing. So this is like a core piece of messaging for us. So we want to educate our ICP about the problem space. We also want to like we write content to grab our ICP's attention, which is different from this, right? Grabbing ICP's attention is like, hey, what are generally things my ICP cares about? Can I be value additive? See me as like a source of value, and then turn to me to learn other things, right? So I might talk to a sales guy about how do you plan. I might write a piece of content on how to plan rep quota that's got nothing to do with like what Glencoco does, but it is relevant content for my ICP, right? So an idea, right? There's these anchors or buckets of like major ideas that we try to broadcast and get in front of our ICPs. Like that's why we write content as businesses, right? And the authenticity aspect comes in where, and maybe this is the weirdest thing, Ben. Like my mentor, my earliest mentor in tech, is this guy named Vivek Bhaskaran. He's the CEO of Question Pro, and he was an investor in my company. But he is unbelievable. He was doing SEO before SEO was called SEO, right? Like, and his his approach around authenticity is like, dude, nobody wants to read the same shit over and over again. That's what he used to tell me. Like, nobody wants to read the same shit over and over again. And the other thing is, you gotta believe that you're doing, if you're in this content game and you genuinely want to write authentic content, you gotta believe that what you've built is making an impact. Like the feeling I get when I write content about Glencoco, or I've ever written content, the frame of mind I try to get myself in is like, I have just discovered like fire, right? And I want to go and tell everybody else, like, hey man, I look at this, right? And that's how a value prop should feel. It's like, dude, we let you do this thing faster, cheaper, better, whatever it is, whatever your anchor is, right? But you're like, hey, there's a better way to do what you're doing today. And I found it, and let me just show you. And then all of my content is taking someone wherever they are. They might not have ever heard of my solution, might not be familiar with the problem. I need to just walk them to that aha moment. But I need to believe that aha moment is authentic and genuine, right? I'm not like doing a smoke and mirrors game of like, oh, it's like, no, I truly believe my product is unbelievable, and I will get you to see why this is going to change your life, right? So these kinds of major ideas is why we write content, and to like sort of ramp people into where they engage with us and the value becomes apparent enough for them to engage with us. And so for that content to have that impact, or I believe the best content that has that impact is authentic. And by authentic, I mean it has its own voice. It doesn't read like a textbook, but it's like opinionated. It gives value, etc. Right? And that, so yeah, that's what I mean by authenticity in terms of content. So with AI, I've realized, dude, if you just gave AI a simple like write me an SEO article, like write me a 500 word article, simple, it won't do it, right? Will that article be good? No, and you can see it. You can try it yourself and just do it, right? Like it's going to read weird. It's going to read hollow, etc. And I think it's because like partly people don't know how to prompt AI correctly just yet, and two, people don't prompt AI like they're trying to make it understand the idea they have in their head, right? And I think that's really the crux and the core of how you get it to be better. But I'm excited to dig more into that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So I love this philosophy because I agree 100%. The whole idea of AI, just write me a content about whatever subject and help me rank for SEO. What's fascinating is AI doesn't have a unique opinion.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing unique or authentic about AI because it's just regurgitating what it's already consumed millions or billions, or even in some of these models, trillions of times from other data sources. Our job is to give it the unique point of view, right? That's why someone, would listen to this podcast, is because they want to hear our experience.
Exactly.
And we have the unique, view of life, experience. Like you just went through your whole background as a co-founder or as a founder who's raised capital, who's now in this position, head of growth. You have amazing experiences and people want to learn from those,
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily just, this is how you raise money, or this is how this is how Glencoco works. They want to hear those experiences and that perspective. So now that we know that people want to read and look at content that has authenticity, how are you actually training AI and helping AI build that authenticity into your content? Like, how are you transferring your brain into this machine and having it help you as opposed to like having it just write it itself?
That's a great question. So where I start is I start at the end of my article. And what I mean by I start at the end of my article is I spend a lot of time just almost meditating on what is the feeling I want someone to have after they read this. Like if there's one thing that they walk away with, like what is that going to be, right? And this could be for a case study. This could be for like just like a general blog article. It could be a LinkedIn post, right? Also content. But I'm like, hey, when someone reads this, like, what do I want them to like take away? And I feel a lot of people get tripped up there where they're like, I want to say X. But the thing is, we're not writing content like authors. Like, I feel like we need to, how do I say this without sounding like a dick to every content marketer out there? But like, we need to like get over ourselves a little bit on in terms of like I'm just gonna start writing this. It's like, no, dude, I am writing things to elicit specific feelings, right? Like I want to drive home specific ideas, specific feelings. So it's important for me to work backwards from that. It's like it's kind of deconstructing like a logical argument. It's what I'm making, right? I can't. I'm writing a proof for you, and like almost like a mathematical, like not a mathematical proof, but I'm writing a proof or like a logically consistent statement of steps that takes you from like, hey, you're experiencing X, Y, and Z. And hopefully at the end of the article, they find value and they're like, I now know from experiencing X, Y, and Z that Glencoco solves my problem, right? Like, and that journey for each person, it's different how they arrive at that finisher. And I need to know, right? Like for if it's like a marketer that's frustrated with demand gen versus like an SDR manager that's frustrated with their existing sales reps, the point that I'm trying to drive for both of these people is the same thing, actually, right? But how I need to get this guy here versus this guy here is actually different, right? And the articles I write for this guy is not relevant to this guy. And so as a result, the first place I start with is at the end, right? Where I'm like, I construct an ICP, and I could even like, I don't know if someone's done this on your podcast, but I could like share my screen, open up ChatGPT, and just show you how it works,
Yeah,
like how I would do it, right? Kind of give you give you like a look behind the scenes of how I approach this stuff.
I love it. This is amazing. Tactical information is what we love.
So let me share my screen with you. So what are we writing an article about today, Ben?
It's a good question. How about how to make AI content authentic?
And so to start with, like, who am I writing that content for? Like, how would you describe that person? Like the person that's worried about authenticity of AI content. It's like an SEO manager, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, some kind of a content manager at a business who has this job and they've got to worry about writing good content, but don't want to necessarily, just make crap content.
Got it. So the first thing I would do is like, I want to know, like, hey, what are content writers today at the kinds of companies that I care about? Like, what are they frustrated about? Right. And so I'm going to start by just being like, okay, well, like conduct research to uncover the 5 major frustrations content writers at B2B companies in the United States, or like let's do B2B SaaS companies. And then you can, I mean, this is like a general thing, but then I would get a little more specific because I want to know, because I know what my tool's value prop is. Let's say I help people write content faster, right? Write better quality content, etc. Right. So I want to know what kinds of complaints these guys have about content generation speed, content quality, right? Or like, maintaining or preserving content quality. So I'm going to say, like, primarily focus on issues that around speed of content gen.
And what I love that you're doing right here
Yeah.
is you are putting your point of view right here. Like starting out the question, how do you get your point of view across? Like we believe this pain point is important for people to overcome. So you're kind of embedding that right here in this first prompt. I love that.
Correct. Right. Like, because if someone says 5 major content writer frustrations, like if someone's frustrated with the fact that they don't have budget to purchase tools, which is a valid content writer frustration, that's not a frustration I care about or I want to address. And if I just let GPT like go wild, just be like, hey, just give me anything, it's going to grab anything. And I don't want that. I want GPT to hone in on problems that I know my tool is spec'd to solve. And I want it to tell me, like, hey, I want it to give me the articulations of that problem that it is able to detect online. So I would run a deep research, and I wouldn't do it right now because we'll just be sitting here staring at each other's faces. But
Nice 20-minute research session right there. Yeah.
I'd run a deep research, and what it would do ideally is like spit out, like, hey man, here's like 5 major frustrations that come up, and of those 5, I'll be able to, as again, so this is where my opinion comes in, right? I am the human in the loop. When it gives me those 5, I'm going to be able to say that, okay, hey, these first 2 are super relevant. This like 4th one is kind of mid, and 3 and 5 are completely unrelated to what I do, right? Or like maybe I don't care about those as value positions as much, right? And then once I have that, right, then like the next thing I do is like once I've figured out those, right, and I might go back and forth with GPT because after it does the deep research, what people don't realize is what it spits out to you is not the accumulation of all of the research it's done. It spits out a summary, but it has taken the effort to go and learn these things. So you can ask it more and more questions about the research it's done. So if you're trying to help it, like if you notice that it's spit out something interesting around like the main frustration around speed is, let's say people have trouble making sure that backlinks are added in. So, they're waiting a long time to get backlinks to put in. So I'm just making up something.
Yeah. No, I love it.
If that becomes the key, right? Then I'm going to ask it some more questions and be like, hey, what are like the major ways people solicit backlinks today? Da, da, da. So, and I can ask it these questions and it'll respond to me. But once I've identified like, hey, here's like the major frustrations these guys have, right? Now I want to talk about like how these people think about authenticity. So when I ask ChatGPT to write an article for me, right, I give ChatGPT a role to play as the article writer, right? Because it is kind of the author. And in this case, I would switch to 4.5 if you guys have access to it. It's a much better writing version of the GPT, because the deep research is great on 4.0, but 4.5 actually has like some really interesting literary knowledge, right?
And the emotional, like that was a big component, right? Like emotional connection through the content.
Creates
Yeah.
that. And here's the thing, guess what? Since you can add files to ChatGPT, something I do if you want to ground it on specific knowledge, specific tone. So if it's an article that I'm writing for my LinkedIn, it can't just sound like anyone. I have a very specific voice when I talk, right? I have a specific like way of speaking. It's more casual. It's a little more, it's always simplified. I try not to like overcomplicate things, and that's kind of my jam, right? So I could either try super super specifically to tell Chat GPT like, hey, do this, don't do this, do this, don't do this. Instead, what I try to tell it to do is I run it through like another iteration where I give it my articles or like previous articles I wrote where I'm like, I love these. These capture my voice, capture my content. Like this sounds like I've written it and I feel like this puts my word out the way I want. You can just take those, download them as like PDFs or text files or whatever it is, give it to ChatGPT. Then you can ask it like, hey, how would you describe the style of this writer? Right? It's just a question I ask to see if it's able to pull out the common themes that I like. Right? Instead of just giving it and being like, write it like these articles. Before I tell it to do that, I want to understand what ChatGPT thinks I mean by write it like these articles. Like, is it when I say like these, what does ChatGPT define that as? Right? So I'm like, okay, here's some example articles that I think are awesome. Tell me about what you would consider the style of the writer based off of these. And then ChatGPT will tell me. It'll be like, let's do, let me find a LinkedIn article I wrote recently.
And while you're doing that, something that I found also really useful in this space where
Mm-hmm.
if you have ChatGPT write a piece of content, like if you're just starting out and you're like, well, maybe I don't really know my voice that well, I would have it write a piece of content on a subject you're passionate about, take that piece of content, drop it into Word, and edit the crud out of it and make it yours. Make it very authentic. I can't talk right now. Make it very true to you. I'll cut out that whole thing, or maybe I won't, but make it true to you. And then take that back and say, okay, ChatGPT, what's the difference between these two pieces of content in tone and voice? And then that's your first iteration of ChatGPT understanding who you are and how you write differently than the default ChatGPT writer, which I love to do.
Totally. That's a good point, right? And again, I think what you're hitting upon is the fact that, as you can see, at every stage you need a human in the loop, because what ChatGPT isn't good at that humans are great at is the amount of implied context that we carry over when we're talking. I can say like, hey, it's like that thing, and you could be there with me, right? Like, oh yeah, I get it. And that's hard, like ChatGPT, to get it there, because it knows everything, but it doesn't have like an opinion of its own. And you type this, right? So it doesn't have like a context it holds, or some sort of view that it subscribes to. So it's hard for us to create these sort of, humans don't even realize we do this, but it's like short form communication, right? Like we communicate in memes. Not memes is like a physical version of it, but really, even when we talk about it, like it's ideas, right? Like it's I can say words or phrases or sentences that send over ideas,
Yeah.
right? I could say like, never forget the Alamo, and you know that I'm talking about Texas, right? But why would that be relevant, right? Like it's because you and I have that shared conceptual
Yeah.
framework. So what I try to do is I try to establish a shared conceptual framework with my GPT. That's super important, because every time I spent, and it takes legwork. It's before we've written any article, but once I have it primed, then I can actually talk to it like I would talk to someone I vibe with and work with really quick, right? And so anyway, so like I'll go like, hey, describe the style. Focus on like delineating the things that make this article interesting as it pertains to the writer's voice, tone. Again, I'm like phoning it in for the podcast, but like, I obsess over this. Like, if I was doing this prompt myself, it would be like a 7, 8 sentence prompt, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of like meticulously done. So like, again, like use of cultural references, conversational relatable tone. So it's like picking up a lot of the things that I care about, right? So now after it's done this, I can be like, perfect. Perfect. Do you think you could emulate this tone for me? And the reason I write it this way, by the way, so this is a yes or no question I've given ChatGPT. And the reason I do this is because if I just say, do you think, can you write an article with this tone? It's just going to start writing something. And I don't want to
Yeah.
do that. Like, it's frustrating because once it starts writing something, that enters its context window. And it's going to be very hard for ChatGPT to like not let that go. Right.
Yeah.
So this is where like I'm like, okay, cool. Damn, this thing is like glazing me on your podcast. I'm not trying to get my praises. But once I have this, now like the stage is set for me to write my content. So I've done my research. I know what like the core 5 things are. Right now, then outside of ChatGPT, I know what my product does. I know what the core aha moments my product drives are. I know what aha moment I want my users to see or like the my readers to get to. Right. So I've set the stage. I've done my research. I know my article. I know this. I know this. Now where I go for I've now have set the stage to like actually work with ChatGPT to write this article. The first thing I do is I don't just start having it write something. Actually, and sometimes I'll even use voice because I don't know where I'm going a lot of the times, right? Like it's like like when I'm just ideating and like trying to come up with an idea, I'm like just talking out loud, spitballing, like trying to figure out like, hey, what's going to make a really strong piece of content, right? And the power here is I can literally get on and the dictate function or like the voice mode function, and I can just chat with ChatGPT, and it's going to give me output. So I can use that sort of stream of consciousness. So I can be like, hey, I'm hearing that content writers are most frustrated about like managing their content calendars as it pertains to like making sudden tweaks for to accommodate like time relevant content, right? Event relevant content. Like if I want to write content that's tariff related, for instance, like have a finite window of time to do that before like something else becomes the talk of the town or if this thing. So I'm like, okay, let's say that that's what's frustrating people, right? Then I'm going to ask ChatGPT to be like, uh, like emulate or pretend, right? Like that you are a like B2B SaaS marketer. Actually, you know what I would do at this stage, if that's the case, is I know I made up the problem statement, but now I'm like, oh, I need to authentically solve it. Like, okay, if that's the case, I would probably have ChatGPT then do another deep research to talk about like, content calendar, the impact. So the way I start thinking about the storyline is like, how would I tell that story to people of, hey, my product helps you more effectively create time relevant content and seamlessly integrate that into your content calendar, right? If that was the communication I was trying to put forth to people, what I would focus on is like, hey, here's the impact of writing content that's like relevant with the major like Google search term of the world at the time. Right. And it could be, or in the US at the time, it could be tariffs, it could be this, it could be that. Right. The reason is like these terms get a lot of organic traffic. These terms are also like top of mind for people because they're getting a lot of other subconscious messaging, right? From news articles to like radio broadcasts, TV, they are overhearing. They're constantly subconsciously primed to think about tariffs, right? So if I send something that's relevant to them that cites tariffs, right, they might actually click, right? So I could be like, okay, I want this to talk about how you can the impact of creating time relevant content, right? I want ChatGPT to do some deep research into that for me versus just generic content, right? I want ChatGPT to talk. I want ChatGPT to tell my reader how they can find out what is the most relevant content at the time or like most relevant topics at the time. So I'm going to tell ChatGPT like, hey, give me research on like how I can look at search term volumes on Google, etc. Like these are things I know now, right? And I'm sure you know as well. Like it's from doing the job, but I need to tell ChatGPT to do these things. I cannot assume that it's shown up to this job as like a B2B marketer, right?
Yeah.
So some people will like just be like, oh, if I just say be a B2B marketer, it's just going to do the right thing. It's like, no, it's not. Right. For each article, you want to treat this thing as like just a word writing machine but you need to be very intentional about the ideation that you give it, and also very intentional about the point you're trying to get to, who it's for, and like the breadcrumbs. And if ChatGPT spit out a structure for me first, after it gives me the structure of the article, I probably go back and forth on it, being like, hey, this is how we want to iterate on the structure. I feel like this piece of the structure is not it's there's a gap between these two. It's not actually getting a reader that's reading point A to point B, right? Work on it for me. And then once it gives me that, people also make the mistake of having ChatGPT try and bang out an entire article in one go, right? And this is perhaps like the biggest mistake I see content writers make over and over again. Because guess what? Once you have like an outline that you're happy with, ChatGPT is great when you give it like great at being more elaborate, more innovative. The more sort of guardrails you give it around like, hey, focus on this thing. So I'll be like, okay, write me a 150-word introduction that sets the stage for this conversation that we're about to have, right? Assuming the reader is this, and this, and so on and so forth. Right? And like SEO optimized for these long tail keywords, right? Once I have that, I'm gonna stop sharing, but because I'm realizing it for me to actually do it live would take a lot of time.
We might have to do like a LinkedIn live session. I think that would be fun.
Yeah. I would love to do that, but once I figured out sort of, hey, this is the outline, then I separately have ChatGPT write the intro, right? Once it's written the intro, I'm like, okay, for that intro, write paragraph 1 about this point, drive this point home, right? Then paragraph 2, 3, etc. So I modularly have ChatGPT compile each paragraph of my article, and then I take those paragraphs, I'm pasting them into like a Notion, right? Where I might tweak it, edit it, because again, I have an opinion. I have phrases I might want to use. I have like specific things I want to mention that it would have been more effort for me to tell ChatGPT to mention those things than for me to just go in and write it in myself, right? And then once I have all of that stuff knocked out and like my ducks in a row with the initial paragraphs, I do a deep read, I look through, and then I take the entire article now that I've compiled, I feed it back into ChatGPT, and I'm like, hey, put yourself in the frame of mind of this B2B marketer, right? That's frustrated with this, right? This thing. And then I can also tell ChatGPT like, hey, I don't want to appeal to the guy that's like super nice and super stoked. I want like harsh but fair, right? Is kind of what I constantly reinforce to ChatGPT. It's like, hey, stop glazing me. Stop telling me I'm like the best or like this is an amazing article. Like just be a really harsh, level-headed, fair critic of this and tell me about what like a B2B marketer that loves reading content online, but is frustrated with their existing content calendar and flexibility in their content calendar. Put yourself in the frame of mind that person and levy a harsh but fair critique of the things you like or don't like, and if this article would convince you to adopt this methodology for writing modular content or whatever it is, right? Once I do that, ChatGPT is actually super critical of my article, and it's great, right? And again, it's going to spit out critique where some are going to be like, yeah, this is kind of dumb. I don't think this is valid feedback because my opinion tells me that. And then there's some that are like, hey, oh, this thing has made a good point. So then I kind of shave into just the good points. And then I tell ChatGPT like, hey, these good points, you know what? You made a good point here with minimal edits to tone, voice, and structure. And you in italics, add in the pieces of content that would help bridge these gaps or like solve these problems you've identified. So what I've done is I've still kept my articles separate. I know what pieces of content ChatGPT is adding in to contribute. And then once again, I'm able to use my lens and be like, did ChatGPT add something that actually bridges the problem that it stated? And then I do a review there, and then I give it back to ChatGPT. And so I can like feed the article back in to that same thing multiple times, right? And it's going to finally, you're going to get something that works really well. Then I use ChatGPT to be like, okay, what's a good SEO optimized header for this? SEO optimized slug, SEO optimized meta description, etc. And then you're like off to the races, right? I know we've kind of gone gone on about this for a bit, but ultimately for me, the use of AI is this thing for like refinement. Like I don't tell ChatGPT like, hey, what would be like the best idea to write here? Like that's a bad that you don't want that. You don't want AI to tell you how like what to think. Like that's just not great because it's not great at it, right? It'll tell you something and it'll tell you something that sounds convincing, but like you said, it has no opinion of its own. And you can see that by anytime you have ChatGPT spit something out, just ask it to eviscerate its own opinion and it will do it. And you know, that's how you know it's not like anchored in objective truth. It's just like predicting things that make sense based off of what you're asked it for, right? And so it's your job as like the content marketer that's piloting this thing. This thing can let you spit out 2-3 articles a day if you're spending your whole time doing content, 4 articles a day, high quality, right? But you want to make sure that like that content is vetted by you, has your voice preserved in it, and that's when you're going to feel that difference, right? Yeah, and people can tell. I also truly believe this. I think humans are like, we are getting better as more and more ChatGPT content comes in. I don't know if and I'd love to get your opinion on this, Ben. But for me, I feel like I can tell, right? That's like not written with like a human in the loop, or like not been a multi prompt process, and something that's just like a lazy like, hey, write me this, and they just took it and put it in there. Right?
Yep.
I can also
100%.
would you say that rings true for you too?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think I did a survey once, and I think people can predict like 70% of the time if AI wrote the material. And I think the 30% is when you're actually prompting right. So 100%.
Yeah. And so yeah, for me, my methodology around this, or like authenticity, when I talk about authenticity in AI content, it's like, hey, at the end of it, I want to be able to rubber stamp this, and I want each article to be something I would personally discuss with someone and feel like I'm adding value in their lives if I met them like at a conference or met them in person or something, right? If I'm writing articles that are just like air filler, sure, like you can move the needle on SEO, I guess. That's just like, it's a cop out. Like, you don't write articles. Like, I truly believe you don't write content to like rank for SEO. You write content to like get your idea across, right? And then if you do that well enough and consistently enough, SEO is going to be a byproduct of doing that. Like, writing it for SEO, just for SEO, is like not a great way to think about things, in my opinion.
Oh, I
And
agree. What's the point of ranking if your content sucks and people read it? You know, like if it's not worth reading, you don't want that to rank anyways.
exactly right. And so that's kind of how I think about authenticity with ChatGPT, or like, you know, with any AI tool. Like, I mess around with Claude, Gemini, like all of them, and overwhelmingly, I found this sort of piecewise approach of setting the stage, of understanding, hey, what is frustrating the people that I want to reach out to. Once I've honed in on that, like, understand like, hey, for this particular frustration, right, how does it affect their lives, et cetera, et cetera. And then on top of that, I'm like, okay, let's talk about how my product solves that frustration, or like, let me talk about, how that frustration can be alleviated. Maybe I'm just giving them like a process advice on how to improve their process, and this is like not a product related article. It's just an article for someone in the space, right? Once I figure that out, then working with ChatGPT kind of keeps my voice. I also oftentimes, like, small tips and tricks I use is I use literary works, believe it or not, to ground it, because I have like favorite authors of, like, it's not just business content, like literally like authors as in like Terry Pratchett or like Neil Gaiman, or like, these guys. And sometimes I'll just be like, hey, like, use this voice, or like this paragraph from this piece of like, I love the way this guy enunciated this, or like got this point across. Can you do something similar to get this across, right? These kinds of things really, really amp up how authentic your content sounds, and it really improves the reader experience, right? Ultimately, if my, like you said, if I'm ranking but my article is a piece of shit, like, people are just gonna churn off of it, right? And be like, this is not useful for me. So it's like, just getting people's eyeballs on your page is like a part of it, but really you want those eyeballs to turn into interested eyeballs, right? And for that, your content's got to be good. And this is how I do it. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Total masterclass right there. We'll have to do a follow up sometime and like actually do a screen share the whole time and actually write an article. And I think that'd
Yeah.
be a fun follow up, but I love it. Rit, if anyone wants to connect with you online and further this conversation, how and where can they find you?
Dang. I mean, if you guys just want to talk with me about like content marketing, like, I'm a nerd about it. So just add me on LinkedIn, connect with me, chat with me. Happy to chat. If you guys are curious about what I'm working on and building with Glencoco, yeah, just again, add me on LinkedIn, and you can also check out glencoco.com, and would love to get on a call with you and show you how you can build like pipeline on a turnkey basis, if that's interesting to you guys. I mean, we have a bunch of customers that are in the sales vertical, but we also have quite quite a few that are like marketing demand gen people that just own the pipeline generation function across the board. And so, yeah, if that's relevant to you, if that's you, like come check out glencoco.com.
Love it. Perfect. Well, Rit, again, thank you for the time and insights today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for your time, Ben. This has been great. And looking forward to connecting again soon.